Hi, and welcome back to Marketing Careers Uncovered. So, as we know, I really don't have to tell any of you listening this, but marketing isn't really just about selling products or services, creating experience, and building relationships. Yeah, they're all important parts, but marketing's also about understanding markets, carving out positioning, routes to market, and really wrapping that all up in a package that someone can ultimately buy into and buy from. And reflecting over the last year or so of doing this podcast, actually, it's that entrepreneurial spirit that drives through all of that. But I really love about marketing, and ultimately that desire to really stay ahead of the game. So today, with that in mind, I'm super thrilled to have Ashley Mason on board with me, an entrepreneur who's been building and growing a successful marketing business called a dash of social. So, Ashley, why don't you get the ball rolling by telling us a little bit about yourself and your business and what you're up to?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today, Dave. My company, as you mentioned, is called Dash of Social. We're based in Massachusetts in the United States, and we're a content marketing agency. So we really primarily focus on social media management, blog content, email marketing, and overall marketing strategy. We tend to work mainly with service based businesses, whether that's professional services or tech startups. And we do everything from supporting the individual business owner themselves to supporting an entire marketing and communications team if our clients already has kind of that internal team set up and prepared. So it's really nice to be able to support these businesses and organizations with helping to drive brand awareness and connect with their ideal clients or customers online.
So, just to give us a little bit of a flavour there in terms of day-to-day life and what it looks like. So let's take social media support. What kind of things when we say supporting with content, are you running that from end to end, or are you picking up particular pieces here depending on the business in question?
Mostly end to end. So the platforms that we support our clients with depends on their industry and what their goals are, but that could be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X are the primary platforms we focus on, but we do everything from developing an initial strategy to outline their goals, an audit of their current strategy, competitor analysis, engagement tactics, and things like that, to actually writing out and developing their monthly content calendars with captions, visuals, hashtags, everything clearly laid out for them, to the community management piece of responding to comments and messages that come through to the accounts, in addition to focusing on that outbound engagement of finding their ideal clients or customers online and engaging with them, to then also doing monthly analytics reports to showcase the growth of the accounts each month, identify the content that's performing the best, and use that information to drive the content that we develop moving forward based on what's helping them to grow. So we focus on taking this deliverable or this project off of our client's plate and ensuring that they have more time to focus on those revenue generating activities within their business.
Sounds like it keeps you busy. You've used
It
the word
does.
we quite a lot. So it's not just you. How many do you have in your team?
Yeah, there's 5 of us now. So I have myself, and then I have 4 team members who support with the overall account management and content writing.
And what are you enjoying personally most out of this?
I really love the overall strategy and creative direction. I did really enjoy writing, and I still enjoy writing very much, but I found that I was getting very much so burnt out, to be completely transparent, being the one to manage everything for my clients. And it got to the point where I really needed to be able to bring in team members who could help me. And then also that would allow me to be able to bring on more clients and accept more projects. And so I really enjoy kind of looking at the bigger picture, thinking about what are the big ideas that we can test or implement for our clients that will help to drive that brand awareness or bring in really good results, and then kind of looping in the right team member to actually help me make that happen. In addition to that, I focus a lot on what I call quality assurance. So although my team is really doing an amazing job at putting together our content and whatever else we're creating for our clients, everything gets kind of passed through me before it gets passed on to the clients. And I do really enjoy that piece as well, because I think it's really important in marketing to have multiple perspectives in a project and kind of get different viewpoints and whatnot. So my team members are always thinking of things that I would have never thought of to do. And on the opposite end, I might catch something that they might not have realized before either. So it's really nice to kind of tag team and collaborate.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting, and yeah, that diversity of perspective
Exactly.
is always really important. And yeah, having having a good crop of clients as well. Does that present some challenges too? Do you find sometimes there's a lot of competing priorities because clients A, B, and C fundamentally don't actually care about each other, do they? So it's yeah, I'm the most important person here.
Yeah.
How are you finding managing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in full transparency, I'll say that the clients that have the highest retainers are always the ones who get prioritized first. The clients who also really value and respect the work that we do tend to get priority as well. I tend to like to focus on the bigger projects and get those out of the way. So that way I have more time to focus on the little things that come here and there. But one thing I will say is that time management and reaching deadlines are both very important to me and two things that I've always prioritized in my business. And so I'm very transparent and open with clients about when they can expect to receive something or when they can expect to hear from me. And I always make sure to at least hit that deadline, if not actually provide the completed project earlier than when I promised. And if a client is looking for something that truthfully has an unrealistic deadline, like if they want a quick turnaround on something that just can't be accommodated, I also make sure to communicate that as well and let them know when I can provide a better timeline for them. I do always try to accommodate clients whenever possible, but last minute requests aren't always possible when there's so many different things getting thrown onto your plate. So I think it's just kind of a mix of always ensuring that you're accommodating your clients whenever possible, but then also not being afraid or hesitating to put your foot down if you truly can't accommodate something because it's an unrealistic request.
It's open communication fundamentally,
Yes,
isn't it? No one's left guessing what the other person's thinking or feeling in a particular moment, because that's when people tend to start filling in the blanks
exactly.
themselves. So,
Exactly.
and thinking about the sort of agency world, and I've spent a little bit of time working in this sort of area myself. I've often found that a surprising amount of businesses actually have quite a limited or no view really of what good marketing looks like, how to go about piecing that together. Do you find yourself often almost as much of in the role of educator as you are delivery?
I feel like I used to be. So I feel like since having Dash of Social for almost 8 years now, in the first half, I'd say, of owning this business, the majority of my clients were the individual business owners. So it was just solo entrepreneurs. And I felt like because of that demographic, that's where I spent most of my time educating and providing resources and explaining why we do things the way that we do. But now, over the past few years, I've really kind of catered more to those really fast paced and growing tech startups or bigger corporate clients or ultimately companies who are a little bit bigger who know what good marketing is, who understand it, but the reason why they're hiring us is because they just don't have the time or resources to do it themselves. So I feel like in the beginning of my agency life, I was spending a lot of that time explaining things, but now because of the shift of the people that we serve, it's not needed as much.
Pretty good. And if I'd hopped into my time machine and asked what you wanted to be when you grew up, would this be it?
I knew I wanted to own a business one day, but I did not know it was going to be a marketing agency. I've always been super entrepreneurial minded, so the idea of running my own business had always been in the back of my brain. But it wasn't until I was probably about 15 or 16 years old when I had that aha moment that marketing would be the one. So, and I also didn't realize I'd start my business as young as I did. I thought it'd be something that I started much later on in my life. So it's just kind of funny how things play out.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is a remarkably young age to have such a clear and mature vision. Actually, what was it about this this space, but was really appealing to you?
Yeah, so I was first introduced to marketing actually because I was a blogger. So back in 2012, I started a fashion and lifestyle blog because I wanted an extra hobby and I've always loved to write. And so starting that blog was something that just kind of came naturally to me. I was spending a ton of time on this blog, but realized that A, only my family was reading it, and B, I was spending all this time but not getting much return from it. So I wanted to find a way to A, monetize it, and B, ensure my content reached the right group of people, which was high school to college age girls. And that's when I realized that social media would be the easiest way to kind of achieve both goals with only one process or one method of doing so. And so this was probably now 2012, 2013, and I started using Twitter and Instagram because Instagram was only about 1 to 2 years old at the time to
Gosh, I
promote my
feel old
blog.
now.
Yeah, to promote my blog and help it get seen by more people. And that, long story short, led me to becoming a micro influencer, which led me to kind of dipping my toes into freelance marketing projects. And that kind of led me to the world of like, oh my gosh, I love marketing and I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I had that aha moment from there where I really knew that I wanted to start my own agency one day.
Let's stick around those the sort of earlier years. I'd be really intrigued just to learn a little bit more about your background personally. Were your family particularly entrepreneurial? We talked about that spark as well, and where that came from. But a little bit more color would be really interesting there.
Yeah. So funny enough, I actually don't have any entrepreneurs in my family. I would say what closely ties with my entrepreneurial draws or my entrepreneurial interests is the fact that both of my parents have always been extremely hard workers and have had an incredible work ethic. Always working long days, working hard, doing whatever they could to help their employers grow their companies. And that kind of came back to me, but more of like an entrepreneurial sense. So although they were um, not necessarily in the corporate role because they weren't really corporate jobs, but although they were in like a 9 to 5 and working for employers, I kind of had this experience of wanting to own my own company and wanting to kind of go against the grain, so to say. I would also say that something that kind of really drew my entrepreneurial interests and passion at a young age was just playtime as a child. I mean, when kids are really young, they play with things that they feel really interested in, whether it's pretending to play house or pretending to be a teacher or pretending to be a doctor. And for me, that was always pretending to own a business. I remember it being as young as 6 years old. My sisters and I used to play this game that we called Stores, where we would create fake money. We would each pretend to own a store and we would shop at each person's store with said fake money. And I just remember constantly begging them to play this game because I love the idea and the whole simulation of owning a business so much, to the point where they actually became sick of it and they no longer wanted to play with me because I just wanted to play it all day, every day. But it's like I was just instantly drawn to that idea of having my business and finding ways to advertise it and all of these things. And I feel like I got a really early concept of marketing and advertising at that young age. And that's kind of what reprompted it, I would say, later on in life because of the fact that I just had this exposure to it and it always kind of stuck with me.
Following on from that, you said you kind of went on this journey of sort of stumbling into running and thinking like an agency from that blog onto leveraging social media and that whole snowballing. Was there ever a point where you went, oh, hold on, I probably need to get some in-house experience first before I start to try going out and winning clients? Did that ever cross your mind?
So I actually did pro bono work first. So going back to when I was like a micro influencer, I was working with all these different companies to do product reviews on my blog for them or attend their press events or just find other partnerships. But I realized that these companies that I was working with barely had a social media presence, if any presence at all. And so at this point, I was super interested in marketing, but I also wanted to support them and help them since they had kind of helped me to grow my blog through their partnerships and collaborations. And so I had offered to do pro bono marketing work for them. So that way they could get something out of it. And so that way I could learn more about it. So I would manage their influencer relationships. I would manage their social media. I would help them develop marketing strategies, just kind of dip my toes in the water and really got my hands dirty to learn more about it. I felt more confident being able to kind of do that work for free before I could just start charging someone. I didn't feel right or ethical to just start charging someone right out of the gates before I really had been able to do that myself. So once I was able to support these companies on a pro bono basis for probably about 6 months, and I had these case studies to show, then that's when I actually started freelancing and charging until I eventually started Dash of Social.
Getting very practical for a moment, when somebody says they're self-taught, what kind of practical things are you actually doing to build those right skills?
Yeah, so I would say I just got started right away by being able to just kind of test things out ultimately. I feel like that's a lot of what marketing is. It's almost trial and error to see what works and what doesn't, especially for different companies. So just diving right in and being able to support these companies on a pro bono basis, I was able to kind of see like what types of visuals would work, how different captions or copy would work, when's the best time of day to post. Like I was testing all these different strategies to get a feel for what might bring them the best results. But I kind of paired that like real world application with a lot of learning. So I was like constantly meeting with people who have been in the industry for years to kind of ask them questions and get their advice. I was taking any course that I could find. I was signing up for all these different webinars. Like I was just kind of getting my hands on as many educational resources as possible. And then taking that information that I was learning and actually applying it or implementing it with the companies that I was helping. So it was kind of like that tag team collaboration of education plus actually doing the work. But I really feel like in marketing, you get the most experience just by actually doing something. I feel like reading about something and learning about something is completely different than actually trying it for yourself. And it was just kind of took a few years of just trial and error and really being able to understand what could help bring the best traction from there.
And it's so wonderful now that there's so much content available out there to learn. YouTube itself is a treasure trove. As you say, webinars and content, and just lurking around the likes of LinkedIn for half an hour or so can be can be an educational experience in itself.
Absolutely.
It's also, well, it's a bit of a double edged sword, though, isn't it? Because how do you filter out the good advice and pointers from the bad, frankly?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to pick up some bad habits or just go down a completely wrong track. So how do you start to develop that filter?
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a challenge, especially because a lot of marketing advice can be a little bit generalized when you're reading about it. I mean, obviously, the exact marketing strategy that's going to work best for your client depends on their specific business, industry, and situation. So it's really hard to take something at face value. But for me, I don't want to say particular, but I guess I'm very careful about the sources that I consume content from. So I don't necessarily just like look at any type of source or any type of publication and read content from there. I kind of pick out the top industry experts and really focus on what they're producing, what they're sharing, and what have you, because in my mind, they've positioned themselves as a trusted expert in the industry. So for me, that might be HubSpot. I'm constantly looking at HubSpot for the content that they're publishing and the resources that they're producing, or Social Media Examiner, because Michael Stelzner does a wonderful job with being able to share the latest things that are happening within social media. And I'll kind of pick a few different publications or resources that I'll just turn to frequently. Because I think that there's also a paralysis analysis that can come where if you just have so much information coming at you at once, it's really easy to feel really overwhelmed. And so I tend to kind of limit myself to probably 3 to 5 resources that I trust and view their content from there and kind of see what they're putting out.
So a really good practical thing that someone can do if actually, yeah, I'm going to go and start, sign up for 5 newsletters or events. Always have a look and dig around and understand the individuals who are producing that or presenting that, and see what have they done. Where have
Exactly.
they where have they worked? Have they got that practical experience to be able to actually offer something that's a value, instead of just some hastily spouted opinions that sound credible but don't ultimately hold any water?
Exactly. Yeah, doing all that research just to ensure that you view them as credible and that you trust them before listening to any advice.
Heading into now, you growing your agency. So your first couple of client wins. We're talking paying clients here now. So you've done this pro bono work. You've developed yourself. You've developed some of that credibility. How do you go about winning your first couple of clients? What things are you doing there to get into that position?
Yeah. So I would say networking right off the bat. That was the biggest thing that I realized could actually help take my business and clientele to the next level. For me, my first few clients actually came from Facebook groups. I joined several, and I'm still a member of several Facebook groups that were focused around entrepreneurship or local businesses right here in Massachusetts that had thousands, if not tens of thousands, of active and engaged members in them, and just spent a ton of time in those groups providing value. So that looked like sharing marketing tips within those groups. That also looked like giving advice to people who kind of ask questions or are looking for referrals in those groups, and also kind of being able to plug or promote myself when someone posted in one of those groups, "Hey, I'm looking for a social media manager. Who would you recommend?" And spending that time consistently showing up and providing value paid off tenfold for me. I'd say probably the majority of our clients have come from Facebook groups directly, whether they're people that I'm in a group with one on one, or if it's a connection that I met from someone that I met through a Facebook group. So I think being able to network both online and offline can do so much for helping to increase your visibility and get seen in front of your ideal clients.
So you're very much playing the long game here, aren't you? You're not just rocking up into these groups and going, "Hey, I'm Ashley. Here's what I'm selling. Come and buy." You're very much firmly planting yourself as, like, I know what I'm talking about. If you go, as discussions are unfolding, as you say, you'll come in and add some of that value. So then, actually, the selling probably becomes the easier bit. Once there's that need there, it's you're there, visible and credible.
Yes, you nailed it, Dave. I mean, I spent months and months just posting consistently and providing value without expecting anything return. But because I kept showing up day after day and week after week, people started to kind of associate with me with marketing. They'd say, "Oh, Ashley Mason, that's Dash of Social. Dash of Social does social media marketing." And so it was like that word association ultimately. And it's because of the fact that people were constantly seeing me in their feed over and over again, it helped me to stick out in their minds. And then when they were ready to hire a social media manager, or when they came across someone who asked them for a recommendation for a social media manager, they instantly thought of me. And so it's very much the long game with being able to constantly provide value and give before you can get, but it will come back to you over time.
And how long was it just yourself? When did you hire your first team member?
It was, I want to say 2019. So it was probably about like 2-ish years after I started Dash of Social. It got to the point where I physically could not take on more work. I was just a little bit overwhelmed. And I realized I was spending all these hours doing things that I didn't necessarily enjoy doing, but that I had to do. And I kind of thought to myself, like, imagine what more I could do if I had 20 hours back in my month or back in my time or whatever if I delegated those tasks off to someone else. And so that's when I realized that being able to bring someone on would allow me to do more and support more people. And that's really what it's all about.
And so as the team's grown, to four now, isn't it? It's four team members and
Correct.
and yourself. So have you hired people as you've gone with particular specialisms in mind, or are you more a group generalists? I guess I'm really interested to get a flavour of how the team works together and gels.
Yeah, absolutely. So the team members that we have don't necessarily specialize in like a certain industry, but we hire team members for specific roles. So we have our social media content writers, and then we also have our account managers. So the content writers are the ones who are developing the monthly content calendars for the clients that we have. And they don't do it for every single client that we have. Each person just gets a handful to prevent them from facing creative burnout and also of course from feeling overwhelmed. And then we also have the account managers who actually oversee the day to day of the accounts. So they're the ones who schedule, approve content, they respond to comments and messages, they help create the monthly analytics reports. They basically oversee like the day to day operations of an account for our clients compared to our other team members who really focus on the writing and execution of that portion.
Very good. And I fear that up to now we've made it sound all like it's very smooth sailing. You know, you wake up, decide you're going to run an agency, you go get some clients, you show up in some groups, and it's all smooth sailing. But I'm pretty sure that's not the case. Yeah. How do you deal with some of the setbacks that are inevitable in this line of work?
Yeah, it's challenging. I feel like, especially as an entrepreneur, there's so much riding on you because you're not only responsible for your success and your client's success, but you're also responsible for providing a livelihood for your team members. And so it's really overwhelming to have that pressure on you. And of course, add on to that, you get imposter syndrome and kind of having that doubt in the back of your mind like, am I actually an expert? Do I really know what I'm doing? It can be really challenging. For me, I found that what's been incredibly helpful is to have friends in the industry who have been through it before and can provide advice. It's also helpful to kind of have someone to lean on or vent to because you might think some problem comes up that's huge, but then you talk to them and they're like, wait a second, Ashley, that's actually not even that big of a deal. And so it's nice to kind of have someone to kind of talk you down from that platform and kind of help you work things through and problem solve, which is really helpful. And just knowing that you have people to turn to when things get tough.
Um, what are some of those sort of setbacks you've experienced? You know, let's give people a little bit of a reality check as to
Yeah.
what some of this stuff's really like.
Yeah. I would say, first and foremost, difficult clients. So having clients who it might feel like you're chasing them, where if they're not great communicators and you need specific things from them and they're not delivering you what you need in order to do your job, that could be really tricky. Or clients who might have unrealistic expectations, kind of managing that. I would also say burnout. Burnout is unfortunately a very common problem in this industry because you kind of always have to be on and always have to be creative, and it can lead to you feeling extremely depleted of energy. For me personally, I also faced ageism. I did start my agency when I was 19. So typically, when people think of ageism, they think of older adults who might be considered by other people too old to do their job. For me, I was considered too young to do my job. So that was really challenging to kind of constantly feel like I needed to prove my expertise and prove my worth to people and not just have them so focused on how old I was. I would also say, too, as I mentioned, the imposter syndrome. Even though I've been in business for almost 8 years, every single day, I doubt my capabilities. I doubt that I have the talent or that I have the skills to keep doing this. And it can be really hard. So when things like that happen, whatever challenge comes up, I always like to look at the data, I say. So think about all the happy clients that I've had throughout the past 8 years, all of the accomplishments I've reached throughout the past 8 years, all the things that I've been able to do that have been possible because of the work that I've done in my business. And I think kind of having those hard facts to refer to kind of help me to stop that negative talk or stop that doubt or that worry because I'm seeing that information right there that proves otherwise.
You see, and this is for me personally where I find that imposter syndrome has been unfairly branded as a bad thing. Both, yeah, the name itself, imposter syndrome. Actually, what you're describing is diligence. Going, I might not know everything. So I'm gonna look at the information available to me. I'm gonna make some reasoned assumptions and judgments. The opposite, the opposite of imposter syndrome is somebody who just blindly charges in, going, "Oh well, what could possibly go wrong? I know everything. I'm absolutely great." And yeah, people like that, unfortunately, they become prime ministers or presidents. There's examples of the opposite of imposter syndrome absolutely abound, and more often than not, it's not good.
Yes. Oh, and it's so great that and ironic that you bring that up actually, because I was just having a conversation with someone a few weeks ago where we were talking about imposter syndrome and they had asked like, how many years do I have to be in business before that goes away? And I'm like, honestly, for me, I don't think it'll ever go away. But I view imposter syndrome as the fact that I care. I care that the work that I'm producing is great. I care that my clients trust me and they enjoy working with me. I care that I'm putting my best foot forward every day as a business owner. And so I'm trying to like reframe that mindset, exactly like you said, Dave, as like imposter syndrome might not necessarily be a bad thing. It means that I just care and really prioritize about the work that I produce and how I position myself in front of people and in front of the world.
So let's rebrand imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So let's look at the other way round now. There's lots of highlights to be had. A couple of your biggest wins and successes so far. What's on your list there?
I gave a TEDx talk back in 2019. That was probably, I'd say, my top win that I've received. That was an incredible experience. I've also been deemed a 40 under 40 honoree by a local media publication here in Massachusetts. I was just named Best Social Media Specialist by another organization based here in Massachusetts called Boston Businesswomen. I feel like I've just been given so many awards and accolades that I don't think would have happened if I hadn't started my own agency. I feel like if I took the corporate route or took the 9 to 5 route, I wouldn't have been presented with the opportunities that I've been able to have. So I'm grateful that I've been able to do that just by taking the leap of faith and becoming an entrepreneur.
So I'm really intrigued as well as to how some of these things come about. So let's pluck one out of out of that long list. The 40 under 40. Yeah. How does that come about? What's the process you go through, and actually, what's the impact then on yourself and your business as a result? So let's just focus on that one a little bit.
Absolutely. So with any of those age ones, like 30 under 30, 40 under 40, most of the time it's a nomination process. So this company that or publication that ran it was called Cape and Plymouth Business Media. And what they do every year is they actually put out an application where anyone who knows someone in their network who would be a good fit for to be a 40 under 40 nominee can be nominated. And so these people have to fill out a form that explains the individual they're nominating, what it is that they do, what they've done that actually deems them credible to be nominated. And then those applications are then presented in front of like a blind group of judges who have no bias to any of the individuals who have been nominated and pick through and select the 40 people each year from there. So for me, I feel like that was a huge compliment because you're not nominating yourself, someone else is nominating you. So it shows that someone has kind of viewed you as such an expert in your industry or has viewed you as someone who deserves to receive an award like that. And I think what comes out of it is just additional visibility and credibility. When someone sees that someone has received a highly sought after award or nomination like that, they're like, wow, that person must know what they're doing if they've received that award. And it really kind of helps you to just build your credibility, build trust, and get seen in front of new audiences because of the fact that these publications are sharing their lists and highlighting these people who have won the award.
Definitely more impactful than well, I saw this thing advertised, slipped them the application fee, and listed myself as a as an award nominee. This is proper.
Exactly.
This is proper award stuff. Stuff
Yes.
here.
Any type of pay to play, I feel like is honestly, or right off the bat, you kind of lose that credibility because it's just someone paying money to then instantly be selected without actually having to reach certain requirements.
The learning certainly doesn't stop ever, really, does it? Does it? Even though you've got a team and you're winning new clients and continuing to grow. How are you personally still keeping your skills sharp, particularly that delicate balance now between, I call it, working on your business alongside working in your business? How are
Yeah.
you how are you juggling all that?
Yeah. So it's a mix of things. So it goes back to having friends with people in your industry, as I mentioned earlier. I feel like I'm always in tune with other marketing people and just chatting with them casually and saying, what's working for your clients? Like, what are you doing that's really bringing good results? And vice versa. I'll share my experience as well. And it's nice to hear those different experts' advice or tips that I can try there. Also, as I mentioned, when it comes to educating myself, I always tend to look at HubSpot or Social Media Examiner and read the articles or watch the videos that those publications are producing to kind of learn from there. I'm also just being able to kind of actually still stay in the work myself, even though most of my team is supporting our clients and doing that work. I still like to have my hands in a few client projects so that way I can kind of keep my toes, keep myself on my toes and kind of keep myself up to date on what's going on. Because I feel like if I pull myself out of the day to day completely, then I won't really be in the know or be so in touch with what's happening and what's changing. So it's kind of like that delicate balance of not having too much work on my plate that I go back to feeling overwhelmed like I once felt, but also not taking everything off my plate so that I'm kind of losing my touch with social media and losing my touch with what's driving the best results.
And how are you structuring that your time between sort of on versus versus in?
Yeah, I break it up by day. So I'm the type of person who likes to wake up really early because I'm really productive first thing in the morning. And I also prefer to work longer days so that I can work less days during the week rather than spread it out evenly through 5 days. So Monday through Wednesday are actually my, I would say, hour heavy days, if that makes sense, where I'm probably working 10, 11, 12-hour days those 3 days to get through all of my client tasks. Then by the time Thursday morning rolls around, I either have the full day just to work on my own internal projects, or I might need just the morning to work on wrapping up a few client tasks. But that leaves me with an entire day on Thursday to continue learning, to developing my own marketing, to doing my own business operations and lead generation. And then Friday, I either am able to take it fully off or I can kind of continue with my internal projects if I still want to be able to get stuff done. But I found that kind of bulking up my days like that and being able to kind of cram everything into 3 days and leave the end of the week open for my own projects or other things that I want to work on has allowed me to ensure that I'm actually treating myself like a client and making sure that I'm getting my own stuff done in addition to completing my clients' work.
And are you managing to stick to that, or are you finding that sometimes things get juggled around a little bit?
I would say it depends on the season. So that's a great question. For me, summer, which is when we're recording right now, tends to be a little bit slower and steadier. So I most of the time am able to stick to that schedule because things don't come up as often compared to fall and winter, which is a crazy time of year for us. And I might kind of need to sacrifice my Thursday and Friday days to complete client work because, of course, clients come first. So I think it's nice to have that flexibility to know that at some points of the year, I might need to hustle. So that way, at other points of the year, I can kind of take a step back and relax. But it's nice to also be able to have that flexibility where if things come up, I can move things around to accommodate them without feeling overwhelmed.
And in terms of some of that, developing your Thursdays. Let's focus in on Thursdays. Are there any particular skills or initiatives that you're working on right now?
I would say I'm working on learning more video editing skills. I love using Descript, which is a really great video editing tool. And we don't really do a lot of video editing for our clients, but I'm looking to do it more for myself. I've been focusing a lot more on my personal branding this past year and being able to make sure that I show up consistently on social media and through other marketing channels. And I'm constantly reminding our clients why using video is so important. So I'm trying to practice what I preach and do it for myself too.
Doctors are the worst patients.
Exactly. Got to practice what you preach. So for me, that's just been diving more into the video editing stuff and just learning more about it.
What's next for you? Where do you want to get to next?
For me, I want to continue stepping into that CEO role. I feel like over the past year or so, I finally have started to pull myself out of the weeds and out of all the day to day tasks so I can focus on the overall business growth. sales and operations. And I would love to get it to a point where I don't necessarily need to be so involved in client projects besides just like communications and what I mentioned earlier, quality assurance. Like I would love to just be the ones to meet with clients and focus on sales meetings rather than being the one to actually write the content, publish it, all of that stuff. I also view myself as multi-passionate. So I see myself as one day not focusing on just marketing, but perhaps pursuing other business opportunities that really excite me. And I think that's really important for anyone in life to remember is that you don't have to stick to just one thing forever. You can absolutely follow other ideas that excite you or really lift you up. So for me, I view myself as continuing to grow the agency, but being able to continue to grow a team who can help to support that growth and also giving more time back into my schedule to perhaps pursue other businesses or opportunities that align with my interests and with my life's goals.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that you certainly don't do this alone. You've been pulling on and speaking to other agency owners, marketers, etc. Where, in terms of that, where are you finding those communities of people? Are they in person? Are they virtual? Is it a bit of a mix of both?
Mix of both. So I would say recommendations from people that I already know in the industry. I've also met these people through LinkedIn, through Facebook. Indeed has been actually a great option as well. So I've just kind of tried to diversify my resources that I'm leveraging in order to meet the best fit.
But actually, yeah, those recommendations are and connections are really important and valuable. And it's actually how we got connected. I think we had a mutual connection on X. I still want to call it Twitter.
Yes, me
I'm
too.
still fighting to not call it Twitter. And yeah, that's how we connected and started discussing. So I think there's definitely a piece of being open to those connections, having those conversations, and you never know where they may lead. You may end up being a guest on a podcast.
Right? I know, you never know. I think it's great. Like, the more people you meet, this is what I always say to people. When you meet someone, you don't just get access to just them, you get access to their network. And it's like, I feel like I'm always getting recommendations or referrals from people who's like a friend of a friend of a friend. And it's nice to know that there's so many degrees of separation or so many degrees of opportunity of people that you could meet and perhaps be opened up to.
So looking back, what's the one thing that you're most proud of, and alternatively, your biggest learning experience so far? If you had to only pick out one from each side,
Yeah, I
just
would
one.
say, yeah. The one that I'm most proud of is actually being able to take my business full time as soon as I graduated from college. I did start my business during my second year of college and had it as a goal to be working full time for myself, no corporate job when I graduated in 2019. But again, that imposter syndrome kept telling me, like, you can't do that. Like, that's kind of unreachable. But throughout the next 3 years, I really hustled to be able to grow my business and build my clientele. So that way, once 2019 rolled around and everyone else in my class was going on job interviews and getting job offers, I was actually going full force ahead with my own company. And so I think that was something that really feels proud to me is that I was able to kind of push through with that goal and reach something and do something very different than what other people my age were doing. I don't think there were any other entrepreneurs in my graduating class in school. And so it was really gratifying to have set a personal goal and reached it. I would say the biggest learning experience for me has been to always trust my gut. I feel like as marketers, we get a gut instinct, we get a gut feeling about whether or not something is a great fit or whether or not it's a really bad fit. And I feel like every time I've ignored that warning flag, I've ended up in a situation where I'm kicking myself later down the line and saying to myself, why didn't I just listen to myself? I knew right off the bat, but I ignored the warning signs and did it anyway. And I think that's something that can happen to anyone in business, whether you're in marketing or not. But just kind of knowing to trust yourself and trust the feelings that you get so that you don't end up in a tricky situation in the future if you had just said no or picked a different outcome.
Um, what are some of those warning signs or red flags that you see? And actually, I'm also intrigued. What compelled you to ignore them?
Yeah. So I would say for me, it's for always related to clients. So if a client has extremely unrealistic expectations, like if they want really big results really quickly, that isn't going to happen. Or I would say if I speak to a potential client and I could just kind of tell by their personality that they're just going to be a little bit difficult or like a micromanager or just something about them just makes me know that we're not going to be a good working fit. I would say those are the two biggest red flags that I come across. And I would say the reason why I usually ignore them is because it typically happens during a time in the year where business might be a little bit slower. Like if business is really busy and I'm getting new leads all the time and signing a lot of new clients, like I tend to listen to those warning signs a lot more because I'm like, oh, I already have new business coming in. I don't really need to worry about these people. But during the times of the year where business is just naturally going through its slower season, I'm like, oh, I should just ignore that because like I really want the client or I really want the project. And I have to remember in those times that the business will come. Like things have been great for the past 8 years. I just need to trust that instinct and not waver on my morals or my beliefs just because I'm feeling scared or worried is really what it comes down to, is feeling scared and worried and anxious, and just kind of sticking true to myself and moving forward.
Easier said than done, though, isn't it? Especially when you've got
Absolutely.
multiple people in your team depending on the work rolling in you know, for them to support themselves and their families.
Right. And it's also too, it's like then there's always that doubt, like, what if I'm overreacting? And what if they're not actually like a bad person? Or what if the project actually goes great and I'm just like overthinking or kind of doubting myself? Because that has also happened before where I have spoken to someone and thought that it might not be a great fit. And then they ended up being one of the best clients I've ever worked with. So part of that is always stuck in the back of my mind where maybe I'm just assuming the worst and kind of overthinking this and overreacting about it.
Brilliant. So, finally, one last question from me. So, if someone's thinking about embarking on a similar role or a very similar journey to yourself, what's the one thing that you'd recommend that to increase the chances of succeeding?
Yeah, I would say to look for mentors. So you had asked the question earlier of whether or not I thought I should go in house for a little bit before starting my company. Even though I didn't work as an employee for an in house agency, I actually have white labeled for other marketing agencies a few times prior, which gave me an incredible amount of experience and insight into how I want to run my own agency. Like I was able to support their clients as a contractor and I was able to see how they structured their services, how they structured their pricing, how they handled their operations and project management, how they did their own marketing. It's like I was able to get another perspective. And there were some things that I saw that made me go, ooh, those are things that I definitely want to do in my agency. And on the other end, I saw things that I was like, ooh, I definitely don't want to do that in my agency. And so I think having that different perspective can do so much. And along with that, just having mentors of successful agency owners who have been through what you're going through right now. It's incredibly helpful to be able to speak to someone who's owned an agency for the past 20 years and ask them for advice when I'm in a sticky situation or just get their tips and insight on something because they've been through the trenches before and they're there to give you seasoned experience.
Some excellent advice there indeed. Thank you ever so much, Ashley, for spending some time with me today. Don't forget, if you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe for future episodes, leave a review, or share with your friends and colleagues. See you next time.